Okay, another test of the Sennheiser MKE 200 versus the iPhone built-in microphone. I have the Sennheiser and the iPhone pretty much next to each other, and I'm just standing in my office talking. The front of the Sennheiser is pretty much pointed at, it's pointed at like my chest, but I'm speaking to the front of it, and the iPhone as well. I pointed like the bottom of the iPhone towards me. Okay, I'm just going to read a sample bit of text so I can compare between them. Fragments. Let's say we had a relatively complicated page in our app which lets us look at two heroes side by side, along with their friends. You can imagine that such a query could quickly get complicated because we would need to repeat the fields at least once, one for each side of the comparison. That's why GraphQL includes reusable units called fragments. Fragments let you construct sets of fields and then include them in queries where you need to. Here's an example of how you could solve the above situation using fragments. You can see how the above query would be pretty repetitive if the fields were repeated. The concept of fragments is frequently used to split complicated application data requirements into smaller chunks, especially when you need to combine lots of UI components with different fragments into one initial data fetch. Using variables inside fragments. It is possible for fragments to access variables declared in the query or mutation. See the variables section for more information. Operation name. In several of the examples above, we have been using a shorthand syntax where we omit both the query keyword and the query name. But in production apps, it's useful to use these to make our code less ambiguous. Here's an example that includes the keyword query as operation type and hero name and friends as operation name. The operation type is either query, mutation, or subscription, and describes what type of operation you're intending to do. The operation type is required unless you're using the query shorthand syntax, in which case you can't supply a name or variable definitions for your operation. The operation name is a meaningful and explicit name for your operation. It is only required in multi-operation documents, but its use is encouraged because it is very helpful for debugging and server-side logging. When something goes wrong, you see errors either in your network logs or in the logs of your GraphQL server, it is easier to identify a query in your codebase by name instead of trying to decipher the contents. Think of this just like a function name in your favorite programming language. For example, in JavaScript, we can easily work only with anonymous functions, but when we give a function a name, it's easier to track it down, debug our code, and log when it's called. In the same way, GraphQL query and mutation names, along with fragment names, can be a useful debugging tool on the server side to identify different GraphQL requests. Okay, that's enough.